It is now my pleasure to introduce Pennsylvania State Representative Valerie Gaydos to deliver our next keynote. Representative Gaydos was elected to serve her 4th term in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives in November of 2024 and will continue to be committed to putting her experience from the private sector to work to help grow the state's economy, improve opportunities for employers and employees across the entire Commonwealth. Representative Gaydos also leads the PA House Republican AI Task Force to monitor and guide the growth of these technologies, and that is precisely why we are honored to have her speak at CMU Energy Week this year. She is also leading the Communications and Technology Committee, or she'll correct me on that exact title in just a second, but please join me in giving Representative Gaydos a round of applause.
Thank you, and it's always hard right after lunch get everyone in to hear a politician speak. But here's the thing is that I'm not a politician. I may be a state house member, but I started my career working in the private sector, working with technology companies. I had a database and information company through the 90s. And so for me, I call myself more of an entrepreneur. So when I talk about Harrisburg, I talk about them, not us. And that's where I think kind of brings the lens and the unique perspective that I bring to the House that I think a lot of people don't. I had 25 years in the private sector working with startup companies, and what really brought me actually back to Pittsburgh. So I grew up here in Pittsburgh, and as I said, I spent 25 years, I had a company that sold data to PricewaterhouseCoopers, and it was mostly in the venture capital arena. So I did that and spent years also investing in small startup companies, had a successful startup company that sold to Intel, and then now started investing in other small startups through a venture fund that invests in veteran-owned startup companies. So why did I want to run for office? As he said, I moved back to Pittsburgh. Unfortunately, my husband had passed away from cancer, and my mom had Parkinson's. And like most good Pittsburghers, we all come back home and we take care of our parents. And I actually want to say that that probably attributes to a lot of success, I think, that we've seen in Pittsburgh, because throughout the 80s, there was really not a whole lot in Pittsburgh. So it's super exciting to see all of this technology, what Carnegie Mellon's doing, just industry and technology, eds and meds, robotics, et cetera. That was not certainly as prevalent in the 80s. And I think a lot of us left, came back. We brought all of our experiences back to Pittsburgh, and hopefully we brought our friends with us. And I think that having foundations like Carnegie Mellon has been just really super. So I wanted to kind of position that so you see the lens in which I look at things. Again, what made me run for office? I sat on the Pennsylvania Business Council PAC board for almost 9 years, and I found it very frustrating that Pennsylvania, just in general, was not really friendly to business climate. And it was funny when I first ran for office, and somebody said to me, like, well, why do you have a company in Maryland? Well, because Maryland had an unlimited number of NOL, net operating loss carry forward, both an extension, both in time and amount. And what I said to the reporter was, I said, why don't you ask me the most important question? Why did I put my business there? And my answer was, no one should ever have to leave Pennsylvania to start a business. And that's what I said, is that that should be the motto. Other states around us are eating our lunch in terms of just business, entrepreneurship, but we have the greatest institutions here, as you see in robotics and now AI. It's just really remarkable. So this is my 4th term. I serve on the Commerce, Finance, Professional Licensure, Liquor, and I'm co-chair of the Life Science Caucus. I did start the Cybersecurity Caucus in the House, and that was for a period of time. Now I'm not a technologist. I was a CEO of a part-time CEO of a cybersecurity company, and this kind of goes to what I really want to get into is the whole education of the legislature doesn't understand what business does. And why? Because we don't have enough business people who actually become legislators. So I don't know, how many of you know your legislator? Do you know your House member? You know your senator? Raise your hand. Okay, good. Those who didn't raise your hand, I want you to go and find out who your legislator is, because just like AI, You could either go one way, it could be really horrible if you don't help guide them, or it could be really, really good. But you want to be the one that is providing the data and input to your legislator. And if you just take your business card, walk into their office and say, hey, look, this is what I do for a living. I want to be a resource for you. I guarantee you that they will call you back. Because most of the time, most of us legislators, and I see Jim Gregory nodding his head, my fellow colleague, people come into the office and they complain about things. But here's the thing is, make sure you get it before the problem occurs. And that's really what I wanted to talk about here, is because last year, the governor had an AI task force. As we all know, he just introduced something this last week. He had some pilot programs with OpenAI and, of course, CMU, and tested the use within government. So the House Republicans also put together an AI opportunity task force, of which I was asked to be on. We also were looking at different things. And at the end of the day, this year we have started the Communications and Technology Committee. I'm a member of the committee. Representative Ortita is the chair. But we want to be able to address these issues before it was all like in the different committees. So cybersecurity was in Veterans Affairs and Emergency Preparedness, and it was almost siloed, or it actually was siloed. So what most of our colleagues don't understand is AI is not necessarily something in and of itself. It is all embedded and it's layered. So you've got, robotics, you've got, the different types of generative AI. Like none of our colleagues really understand it. They just see that as AI as some sort of magic box. I look at it too as that it's sort of like Sorcerer's Apprentice. As I said, it can either go really wrong or it could go really right, or it accentuates all of our good traits and our smart traits, but it also accentuates, and it can, our bad traits if we don't do that. So the other thing that was started was it was the Joint State Government Advisory Committee on AI Impact and the Potential in Pennsylvania, and I serve on that with Representative Mirsky. And in fact, DCED's deputy, Jen Gilberg, is on the committee as well. So some of the things we were talking about is that the committee, everybody wanted to talk about the dangers of AI. And we had a question here earlier this morning. Someone said, well, let's talk about the dark side of AI. We said we want to talk about the positive side of AI, because what happens is when you have legislators who don't understand what it is, they want to regulate it. And that's a problem. And that goes back to what I just said, is that you really have to get engaged and talk to them and communicate and tell what you do and what your background is, because it could be the greatest thing, it could be the greatest opportunity, but it can also be a negative. But let's focus on the real positive things. So the AI impact study, what it is that it's looking at the guidelines and whether they should regulate it. And what's interesting, I just got back from Germany, and the German parliament, they want to immediately just regulate everything. They're afraid of everything, and they were actually really impressed with our conversations, because we were immediately, as Americans, trying to go towards the opportunistic side of how that can really enhance all aspects of life. And that's really what we were doing in this, the Joint State Government Task Force, or Joint State Government study. So we looked at it like, what is currently the uses in the municipal government, county government, state government, and also, what we're looking at is that trying to make people understand that is meant to be additive, not to replace human intelligence. And so as we all know, Governor Shapiro has done a lot of really cool things with that. But we also must look at how this is being fueled, which is why we're here in this conference today, is because it really should be an all of the above approach. And so when you're looking at how government takes a look at these things, it is about policy, it's about energy, and as we all know, and I'm not going to repeat what people said today, is that these data centers can contribute more than 60% of incremental power demands here in the US, and we're not prepared for this. The fact is, in fact, this was obviously one of the talks of this morning, the future of energy in Pennsylvania will be influenced by a highly diverse set of drivers, including developments in technology, markets, investment, and policy. Okay, again, this is why you have to get involved, because if you don't start making the policy, government people will do that. And it's kind of like what my parents used to say when I said, I'm bored. Okay, you know what? If you're bored, either you find something else for you to do, or I will find it for you, and I can guarantee you government will never find the right solution. I guarantee that. And that's been my greatest frustration. So right now, the two business revolutions happening right now, as we all know, is generative AI and energy transition. So, and we all know that the demand is due to all those data centers, hyperscalers. I won't go into all that. And I thought this was a very fascinating statistic, is that energy demand for US data centers is projected to rise by 15 to 20% annually. That's annually, and reaching 100 to 130 gigawatt hours by 2030. And that's enough to power 2/3 of all US households. I mean, we're trying to impress upon our colleagues that this is serious. We're gonna come off a cliff. Everyone's pushing AI, robotics, et cetera, and these major data centers that draw all this energy, but no one is really thinking about how we're going to fuel this. You guys are. And it has to be an all of the above approach. But reliability is really number one. How do we get reliability? It is an all of the above approach, but people have to understand the limitations of certain sources of energy. In fact, the Pittsburgh airport is in my district, and I always laugh because they all talk about how they're off-grid, and I hear people say that, well, the airport's totally independent, they're off the grid, but they always show pictures of solar panels. And I said to Christina Skasotis, I said, stop, show up maybe a picture of everything, okay? Because that's the kind of stuff that we are responsible for embedding in people's minds, and particularly kids. It's not, you can't run that on solar, at least not now. So the bottom line is that there's no reliable alternative to in existence today that will be ready to replace immediately coal, natural gas, nuclear, and it has to be phased out. It can't just be an either or. And impressing upon my colleagues who always want to get into these political fights is a real challenge. So it has to be planned out, and planning is not a very good trait that I find of some of my colleagues in the legislature, unfortunately. Bad energy policy is causing a downward shift in energy supply. As you said, you can't run AI on solar. 88% of electricity during Winter Storm Enzo in 2025 was powered by natural gas. People have to recognize that. Solutions. Oh, and by the way, the Wall Street Journal had an article that the DOE had completed a study in 2023 that showed that increased natural gas exports would have a negligible effect on domestic price while modestly reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So primarily because LNG exports would actually be displacing coal in so many ways. So again, this has to be planned out. But this is why you have to get involved with your legislators. So solutions, energy, education. We have to address cybersecurity, data privacy. I'm on the Commerce Committee, but it's also, we have to address business issues which enable you to do what you do and get government out of the way. Because again, if you don't regulate yourself, if you don't make the plans, government will make it for you. And that's the last thing I can guarantee that you will want. So the state continues, of course, to encourage all the alternative energy portfolio standards, and we're really working on a lot of things that really try to support all of that. It is all of the above. Airport CNX project in my district, $1.5 billion, plan to mix natural gas with methane from coal and to produce hydrogen. Hydrogen is great, but it's not going to happen until the federal government allows that to be made from, get those tax credits. That's huge. Mainspring Energy, located just outside the airport, they're going to develop and manufacture linear generators. That's going to also help. And of course, going through the list of what are some of the things that we in the government are looking at: alternative fuel production tax credits, permitting, getting government out of the way, solar energy incentives, energy efficiency incentives, tax credits. Governor has the lightning plan, carbon capture. We've actually done things on that. Energy choice, also establishment of an independent energy office, which will provide some objective data. But again, your input, really important. And of course, restructuring the Pennsylvania Energy PETA, and a whole host of things that we're working on. But it isn't all of the above. And, you know, I think that we need to also look at education for the kids coming up. And that's kind of the final aspect of this, is that kids, we need to teach them critical thinking, because AI is going to replace the ability to grab data, but it's not going to replace thinking. And that's what's going to be most important. And I think that's something that we have been neglecting the most, getting these kids to actually do critical thinking, which I know there's a lot of people in this room here have a lot of critical thinking, and I appreciate that. So with that, I'm going to open up to questions.
So I think we have enough time for one, possibly two questions if they're super quick.
Is Sarah here? Oh, there you go. How about a mass transit question? Because that'll be nice into probably what Sarah's going to talk about. Hydrogen. We need hydrogen, airport, and hopefully we can get the PRT to get some hydrogen buses.
All right, we have one question on the other side of the room.
Okay.
When you talk about the education piece, has the state thought about how we educate the local towns and counties on the energy transition that's needed? Because I find that tends to be the place where we see the most resistance.
Interesting. Well, you know, I mean, obviously there's some legislation too that is out there that says that, you know, the government can't tell a local municipality, I think this is what you're referring to, a government can't tell a local municipality can't determine whether or not to have a certain type of fuel source. Look, I'm a strong believer in local government. I think they have the authority to do that, but I think you're right. I think it's all about education. I always tell people in the legislature there's 3 ways that we can accomplish goals: legislation, regulation, and communication. And I'll tell you the third one, we hardly do enough of that.
Representative Gaydos, thank you so much. It is an honor to have you at CMU Energy Week 2025. Thank you.